Hello my friend. In this video, I'm gonna break down the things you need to know about CSS Box Model, which consists of margin, padding, and border. So, without any further ado, let's get started.
Here, as you can see, I've already had an HTML document with two paragraph elements within. First of all, I'm gonna talk about border because I think it is the easiest of the three. Border is a border, as the name suggests, or a boundary of an element, in this case, an HTML element. So, here, if I add a border 1 pixel solid red, you will see a red border along the side of the paragraph element. By the way, the syntax here that I used for adding a border is the shorthand which covers the border width, this one here, okay, the border style and the border color properties, respectively from left to the right on the shorthand. Now, if we change the border width value, this one right here, for example 2 pixels, which is a greater value, we will see the border area gets larger, and vice versa. Now, let's talk about border style. Here, the border style is solid as default. We can change it to other three values. For example, dashed, and then dotted, and the last one, double. And the last one about border, as you might have guessed, if we change the color from the border property here, for example, we change it to green, then the border color will change right here. Now, let's move on to margin. Margin is the gap between HTML elements, whether it is the gap on the top, right, bottom, or left side of the element. As you can see here, I've already had two paragraph elements that produce the output shown on the right. These two ones right here. But wait, what? Do you see the gap between the first and the second paragraph? Or do you also see the gap on the left and on the right side of each paragraph element? Yup, it is a margin set as default to the paragraph elements. Now, if we adjust the margin of the paragraphs, for example, we set it to, let's say, 20 pixels, we will get bigger gaps, okay? And vice versa. If we set it to 0, for example, we will get no gap. Now, here, there's still a gap in this area. Alright, but it's not actually because of the margin of the paragraph elements. The body also has margin. Now let's say we set the margin of the body to 0, then we will get rid of any gap occurred previously. Okay, now let's set it back to the previous settings like this. Okay. If you noticed, we have just changed the margin of the fourth side of the paragraph at the same time. So what I actually used here for the margin, this one right here, is the shorthand syntax for margin. If needed, or if you personally prefer to adjust the margin of each side differently, you can use these properties. For example, if you just want to set the top margin, you can just use the margin top property and then type the value you want, for example 20 pixels, right? And then you can also use margin right to adjust the right gap, right? For example, 10 pixels, and then margin button. For example, 8 pixels. And the last one, margin left. Okay, and we'll just give 2 pixels. Okay, here's the result. Now you see. Actually, if you think that it is better to just stay with one property, but you still want to differently adjust the margin of each side, you can stay with this property, with just margin, okay, without needed to actually set it manually one by one, okay. And here you can use either 2, 3, or 4 values. If you use the values, for example, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, then the first value, 10 pixels, will adjust the top and the bottom margin. And the second value, which in this case is 20 pixels, will adjust the left and the right margin. Okay? Like that. And you can also use 3 values. Let's just go with 10 pixels, 20 pixels, and 50 pixels. Okay? The 10 pixels, or the first value, is going to be for the top margin. The second value will be for the left and the right margin. And the last one, the third, is for the bottom margin. Now if we hit save, we will produce these outputs. Now, if we use 4 values for the margin, for example, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, 50 pixels, and then 8 pixels, we will produce this output on the right. And what it means by those 4 values is that each value going from left to right respectively adjusts the margin from the top margin going clockwise to the left margin. So it means the first value will adjust the top margin, the second one is for the right margin, the third one is for the bottom margin, and the last one is for the left margin. All these syntaxes and shorthand for margin can also be applied for padding. But before talking about padding, there's one more thing I want you to know about margin, which is the margin's behavior. So let's set it back to default like that. Here, no, actually, in general case, if we have a gap, okay, between elements that is potentially caused by the margin of 2 or more elements, then it is always the biggest margin that makes that gap. Does it sound complicated? Okay, let's take a look at the gap between these paragraphs. If you think that this gap right here is the combination of the bottom margin of the first paragraph and the top margin of the second paragraph, then you are completely wrong. It is actually either the bottom margin of the first paragraph or the top margin of the second paragraph that makes this gap between the first and the second paragraph. Depends on which one is bigger. Okay, so for example, if we set the bottom margin or the margin bottom of the first paragraph element to be 50 pixels, okay, we'll have this gap. Then the top margin 60 pixels, then the gap will increase. Okay, it will be increased by 10 pixels, and now the gap is 60 pixels. Okay, now if we change the value, this one to be 50 pixels and this one to be 60, still the gap doesn't change. It will stay to be 60 pixels. Okay, so the behavior of margin is that it will always see which one is larger and take that larger value. Alright, that's it for margin. Okay, now let's talk about padding. Padding is the gap or distance between the element's border and the element's content. Or we can also say that padding is the inner gap while margin is the outer gap. Okay, now back to padding. If I add padding to the paragraph element, in this case padding of 10 pixels, okay, we will see a gap between the green border and the paragraph content, which is the words, first paragraph and second paragraph. Just like margin, padding also consists of top padding, right padding, bottom padding, and left padding. In order to adjust the padding, you can use the same syntax or shorthand that we previously used for margin. But don't forget that the keyword is padding. For example, here padding of 10 pixels, 12 pixels, 15 pixels, and 8 pixels. Okay? We'll show this output.
Alright, you made it to the end of this video. Congrats! Now at least you understand the fundamental of CSS Box Model, the margin, padding, and border. In the next video, I'm gonna cover the last part of CSS Box Model that will come in handy when dealing with specific space required for elements to be horizontally aligned. So don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss any video coming soon. Bye!